Good evening and welcome to this edition of Vantage Point. We expect to explore in this program and several others the simple question of our culture. What is it? What is this thing we celebrate at this time of year? November, Independence, Creole Festival. Why are we celebrating it? Do we understand it? Are we connecting that culture to anything else in our lives as a people, as a society, even as a people of a region called the Caribbean? What is this thing, culture, as it relates to this other thing we call heritage? What is heritage? It's interesting, the United Nations Education and Scientific and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, says heritage is our legacy from the past. What we live with today and what we pass on to future generations. It's a very interesting definition of the term. And if we accept that as an operating definition for the programs and the series we plan to do on culture, it'll guide us. Because one could argue that culture is who we are, what we are, where we are, and how we are in local language. And we're going to do a series that begins looking at how do we express ourselves in dress and attire, for example. How does that say to the world who we are? And to help us, to walk us through, to guide us through this area that we take so much for granted, we've brought to Vantage Point somebody who has an extraordinary vantage point on this issue, Delia Wykes. Welcome to you, Delia.
Thank you, Arthur.
I'm so looking forward to this. You know why? Not only because it's a chance to chat with you up close, but also it's to chat about something I know very little about. And I'm so happy that you have given us the opportunity to be with you on this program and to join us and to share your extraordinary depth and understanding about this. So we're going to take a short break, and when we come back we're going to commence our conversation with Delia on this business of what we call a traditional dress and some aspects of it that you've been taking for granted maybe for too long. So we'll be right back. Welcome back everyone, and we're with Delia Wykes. Delia, I have watched your work on the stage, in productions. I've watched you work behind the scenes over the years, facilitating the cultural process. I've also watched you work passing on your knowledge, particularly to do with the traditional attire, to young and not so young persons. Why is this important to Delia? Why do you do this? I want to start there. What's driving you? What's keeping you engaged with this aspect of the culture?
Well, Arthur, one of the things I'll tell you is that I want to be immortal. And my idea of immortality is being here even after I have died. And the one way that I can guarantee that I'll be here is by passing on what I know. So even after I'm long gone, people will be doing the things that I've taught, and so that is my way of living.
Where did you get this knowledge relating to the traditional attire and whatnot? Who gave that to you, or where did you get that? What's the place?
If you're looking for an exact location, I would have to say from the school of life. It is by living in a particular environment, being conscious of what is happening around you, and actively going out there and doing research. Not just being satisfied to see something and copying. If you do something, you need to know why it is that you're doing something.
But you were born and raised in
I was born and raised in Granby.
Granby. And how did that, just for the record, how does Granby influence somebody like Delia?
I will tell you something, Athi. In Granby, at least during the time that I was growing up there, the language that you lived with was Creole. You learned English when you started going to school.
Okay.
And so a lot of people marvel when they go to Granby and they see little children who are barely able to walk, and yet they are able to hash a patois.
Fluent.
Because that is the language of their lives. I, on the other hand, was not allowed to speak patois.
Why?
It was patois. Patois was the language for big people so that they could express themselves. Because I mean, now that we know about patois, there's a certain flavoring that goes with using the language. And children were supposed to speak English. Even if you spoke it badly, until you started going to school and you learned it properly. But you were supposed to speak English. But we all understood what was going on.
But there is this notion, and the UNESCO actually today, several years later, gives full credit to it, that it is the location, it is the place, meaning the cultural space, that shapes the person.
Definitely.
And is that true for you?
I'm a firm believer in that. I'm thinking, maybe if I were born in some other part of the world or even another part of Dominica, I would have been a different Delia.
Okay.
But it's just my whole experience, being born at a time where your community was not just the people in your immediate vicinity, but all of those people who touched your life at one time or the other. Your family was not only those people in the house with you, but everybody who was one day older than you had a responsibility for you. And you could not do certain things, else you would expect to get 2, 3, 4, and 5 volleys for one little incident.
Do you remember a time in your early childhood where you would walk out into the street and you would still see people dressed in what we today call traditional dress, traditional clothing, or had that passed?
No, Athi. For example, what I'm wearing now, that is what the older women would wear.
Okay.
If they were going to their gardens, which was the regular activity for a lot of folk. They would get up in the morning, do what they had to do in the house, prepare the meals, give everybody their breakfast, prepare whatever. And then they would put on their garden clothes, which looked like what I'm wearing.
Okay.
And they would go work in the garden. The men would have gone earlier. And the men wore what normally, if we're doing a display of our traditional wear, what the young men would wear. They would wear their khaki shirts and the khaki pants, or their old jeans and those kinds of things. So it's not something totally foreign. For me, these things are not costumes. They're actually clothes, everyday clothes, to do work and to be comfortable doing the work that you have to do.
A few years ago, I remember traveling with Teat Powell to West Africa, to Cameroon. And I remember seeing people exactly like you, and of course exactly like many other Dominicans. And you know, Powell himself and myself, we would always marvel. We would play little games of finding Dominicans in Cameroon. And the first place we looked at, of course, was the person's face, which seemed to carry the whole story of the person. And of course, in West Africa, they still wear a lot of their traditional clothing, but most particularly, Delia, and this is where you come in, the head ties. They do have ways in which they wear things on their head, sometimes designed to carry load, to assist in the carrying of the load, but other times just to say, look, this is who I am today. Let's start talking about the face, the head, and what's on the head.
I think the tying of the head is something that has been practiced as far back as I know. you hardly ever saw a grown woman with her head uncovered. She either had on a hat or her head was tied. And it's almost as if your hair was not supposed to be exposed.
Yeah, that's the impression one gets, but that wasn't the intention though, was it? Not to hide the hair?
No, not to hide the hair.
All right.
But it's a number of things going on there. We're in the Caribbean. It's hot. We sweat a lot. And I don't know anybody who has had the experience of beads of sweat running into your eyes. No, it's not a pleasant experience.
No. Yeah, it's a burning experience.
Right. And so, if you prepare for your day, you know you're going to be out there, where it's going to be hot, you will sweat, then you need to find a way of keeping your eyes safe, because you're going to need your hands to do your work anyway. One of the most practical ways of doing that is by keeping your head tied. If you would notice, when we do the traditional head ties, the forehead is covered. And so that is where the sweat drips off into that head kerchief. Keeps you cool, keeps you dry, no sweat in your eyes. And also, sometimes people have so much to do. You have no time to worry about the hairstyle.
And combing and
If I were to
styling.
undo my head this morning, Afi, I think you'd fall off that chair.
Really?
Yes. But unless I tell you right now, you don't know.
I know.
Because my head is tied.
Absolutely.
And with our research, we have found out that the different types of headdress would be worn by the different people depending on what work they do. So for example, what I am wearing is called a revolver.
That's what you're wearing right
yes.
now? Okay.
And it would be worn by somebody working in the house. It is flat at the top, so if needs be, if she needed to carry a tray of freshly ironed clothes or something, she could put it on her head.
Okay.
And then, depending on what they're wearing, then you will have the different styles.
But go back to the name, revolver.
Oh, the revolver, I think it was a joke. There is only one part of it that's sticking up.
Yes.
So they said that's the gun that's going to shoot you. And I suspect those older women used to use that to terrorize the children.
Okay.
So most of the headpieces got their names based on what they represented, what they looked like.
But in an interesting way, it allowed the woman to actually carry out yet another domestic household function, which is to manage the children.
Yes.
Even by saying, hey, you see this?
Yes.
So in a strange way, the head tie is part
so
of child management.
Yes, so it gives her a certain amount of authority.
Okay, right.
So yes, you know Daddy has a revolver, and I have my revolver too, and if you're not very careful, I will shoot you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So you see, even with all of this thing, we can still have fun while we do what it is that we have to do. And it is all of this that I really want to pass on so people understand what each thing means. And so when you decide to try to wear this thing, then you develop this the attitude that goes with it.
All right. Well,
because you see, our Caribbean nest athlete is not just dressing, you know, but is having a certain attitude to go with the outfit.
It's the style that goes with it. The gam. And actually, that leads us to an interesting point, because I think, frankly, this is television. I want you to show us a bit more about, okay, tying the revolver and tying the other fascinating names I know you have for the various head ties. So I want us to actually have a chance to see the artist at work, the artist in Delia when it comes to those traditional head ties that we all take for granted. I'm sure you didn't know that one of them was called revolver. There you go. So lesson one. And so Delia, let's we've set up a table. And we have some materials over there. I don't know what you're going to do with them. I just know it's going to be interesting and fascinating. So let's take a break and let's allow you to demonstrate.
With my magic.
Absolutely. All right, let's go. Well, here we are, Delia. I see you have some already done head ties.
Yes.
What are these?
These are actually, with the exception of this one, these are the ones that can be worn with the full dress, the duet.
Okay.
These are what we call the tête en l'air because of the peak standing at the front. They are plain, so the fabric is just done as it is. It is tied once, and then you never have to tie it again.
So it will just stay permanently?
It stays
tied.
that way because it's actually tied wet using a mixture of gum arabic and water.
Okay.
And then once that is tied, then you have it for life.
So this is fabricated. This is a product that you can sell and put on a shelf and have it available.
Yes, and it sells very well.
Sells very well.
Especially if they can see that it's quality work, then people will buy it.
I'm looking at this. This looks like somebody took a lot of time to make this an intimate kind of weave.
It is actually done by teasing the cloth into position using a pin.
How long would it take you, a skilled person, to build something like this?
Maybe half an hour.
Half an hour. Hey, that's wonderful.
But I have demonstrated doing that particular headpiece to a number of people, and most of them, they say, Mrs. Wykes, thanks for the experience, but I'll pay you to do it for me.
Patience. All right, all right. I knew that was coming up.
This is also a tête en l'air, but all of the yellow that you see here has been painted onto the fabric before it was tied.
So the original fabric was like a deep blue, this blue and purple.
I will show you the original fabric in a while.
All right.
And because it is painted in yellow, then it's called a tête calendée.
What is that?
Because the art of painting in yellow is calendéing, and the person who does it is a calendeuse.
Okay. Now this was traditionally done by women?
Yes.
Okay, all right, okay.
So what I have done is sometimes I tend to be a little bit extravagant. So I decided, if I have to calendé, let me just do a grand thing. So I went ahead, I calendéed the fabric for the headpiece. I also did a foulard.
Okay.
And if you turn the foulard over, you see what the fabric looks like before you put
the yellow on. Okay.
So you see the yellow, it's almost like just adding a whole new life.
And it's for appeal and...
Yes. And I also have the jip in this.
Okay.
So when I wear that outfit, I feel like $1 million.
Feel like a queen.
Oh yes.
Absolutely.
And the other...
just before you move on, these are normally worn with what?
With the guan wop, the duet, the full dress.
All right, okay, okay.
The only other one, so these are the tête en l'air, and the only other one that can be worn with the duet is this one, which is the tête cassée. Everybody calls every head tie tête cassée.
Why is it called the tête cassée?
Because I think to actually do it, you have to cassé your tête. That is all I can come up with. And so but I teach people to do that one. When they see you have to do this and you have to basically be very acrobatic, I think that's how the name came up.
And this would be worn with the same...
With the duet. So the tête cassée and the tête en l'air, these are the things that can be worn with the duet. Everything else is worn with the jip and the other creative forms of dress.
And you could use any material to do this?
Yes, but it is done very well with the madras fabric because of the particular weave, the size of it, so it manipulates very well to give you what you want.
Okay, okay. And this?
Now this is, we call this the kodmawe yam. For the simple reason that to get it done, it's like vining a yam on a stick.
Okay.
So that is how the name came up.
All right.
So you just wind this up quickly and then tie it, and you're good to go.
All right.
Okay.
First, you're going to do the one with the model. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
So I'm going to do one of the head ties. We will do the chupom, and the people will see.
Okay.
How we get that done.
Okay. Fine.
So remember, we spoke about using old paper and using things that are readily available.
So you're recycling, actually.
Yes.
Recycling.
So for the chupom or the cabbage, and at the end you will see why it is called the cabbage. You need to choose a fabric that has some green in it.
Okay. And why is that?
It's a cabbage.
All right. Okay.
Obviously. So if you can
Wasn't
get
so obvious.
if you can find something with purple, then go ahead as
Right,
well.
that's right, that's right. Okay.
So you use this. You need at least 3 sheets of paper.
Okay.
And we'll do the demonstration.
All right.
So I have one already. Let me get 2 more sheets of paper.
Yeah, let's see
And
how
we
you
shall
get that
see
fold
how
on the paper.
we're going about doing our things.
All right.
You just crumple the paper to give the cabbage form, and the second one is for size.
All right.
So that you need to prepare before you actually start tying.
Right, excellent.
This would have been a regular sheet of paper that you just fold across on the diagonal, and it's just to help the headpiece to keep its form once it's tied.
Once it's placed, okay.
You fold your cloth diagonally and you slide the paper in between the folds.
Okay. And this will help you maintain the shape that you want.
Yes, because what you do is you want it to be able to keep its form when you're not wearing it.
Of course.
Because if not, it means that every time you need to wear it, you're going to have to ask somebody to tie you up.
All right.
If your cloth is new, then you can use it as is.
Okay.
If, however, it is something that you have used already, then you need to wash it, starch it, so that it is nice and crisp. You fold the longest part of your cloth at least twice to give you a headband that will go across the head. And then using your head form, you position it on the head and pin it in place, because remember my model has no hands, so she cannot hold the fabric for me. I am using corsage pins because the ordinary sewing pins, they're a little bit too short, so by the time you start pulling on the fabric, it may be a little bit loose. One of the things is, if you are as strong as me, you have to be very careful when you're pushing in those pins, because they can just bend.
Okay.
So you have to work them in.
Slowly.
Not slowly, gently.
Okay.
Because you need speed to get your work done, else you're going to use the whole afternoon just to do one head tie.
Excellent.
And my poor model has been used and abused. I stick the pins everywhere.
You need to guarantee me you're not going to use pins on my head, on anybody when you do that.
We will work that out,
Okay.
Because remember, I said the only reason that I'm using pins on my model is because she has no hands.
Okay.
But you have hands. If you put your hands to good use, then you won't have any pins stuck in it. So I'm separating the folds of the cloth. The one on the head, I try to pleat it so it lies flat on the head. And then I pleat my paper so that nobody knows that there is paper in my headpiece unless I tell them.
Okay.
So it doesn't matter what newspaper you use, and don't worry if the paper tears, life goes on.
Well, there's more where that came from.
Oh,
anyhow.
Lots more. And you can use any paper. Any paper that's available, that is free, that is cheap, that is fine. Okay, so the extra paper, you just curl it up so that it comes on the crown of the head. Then our form that we had created before, we rest it on the head and we cover it over with the cloth.
Now I begin to see it. Yes.
Now you use tension to keep everything in place, because if you don't, then that head is going to start rolling all over the place.
Right.
And cabbage has leaves, so you decide that you're working with 4 ends.
All right.
So the one that was below, we pulled it
on the
up,
top, yes.
and we begin securing.
Right.
First one piece from the side, then we bring up the other piece from the top. And in all that you do, you try to keep your work neat, so that at the end of the day, whoever is going to wear it will be happy to wear this thing, because it invites them to wear it. And I hardly use pins in the finished product.
Okay.
Because I'm tying heads, I'm not pinning heads.
Right.
You have to make sure you have fingers on your eyes and eyes on your fingers, so that you can get a nice finished product, so that somebody is going to be very happy to wear this thing that you have created.
Okay. Well, I can see the work being converted from paper and cloth into art. The materials being converted from paper and cloth into art.
And the thing is, sometimes the ends of the cloth will tell you where they want to lie.
Yeah, and you just go with that.
The most that I need to do at this time is just to secure the little ends so that they're not flopping all over the place.
All right.
So I'm actually going to use one pin to secure the two in the back.
All right.
For the people whose fingers are very soft, they can make sure they have a thimble on hand, so that they don't damage their hands too much. But I guess my hands are a little bit accustomed.
Okay.
And there you have it.
Yeah, that just about is done in the time that we have. So could we let the camera kind of pick up a view of this? This really is wonderful. And it didn't take that much time. It took you a few minutes using local materials. One other thing, I mean, the selection of material in terms of color and so on, is this just kind of a customer choice, a client choice, or the designer, maker's choice? Or are there messages that different colors and designs?
The thing about it is that, Arthi, what I've noticed is every year there are some colors that come out. So some years you have a lot of browns, another year you have blues. And so what I've done is, over time, I have actually purchased a selection. What I normally tell people is, depending on the head tie, the style that you want, then try to choose a colored fabric that goes with that. I mean, a black and white butterfly may look nice because the person who ties it may have the skill, but black and white for a butterfly, I don't really think so. Maybe something, yes, they are, but so for the person who is in mourning, black and white may work well. But otherwise, you have the reds and the blues. So for example, you want to do the cabbage, you go with the greens. You want to do the three peaks, look for something spectacular. You want to do a butterfly, look for something bright and eye-catching. And so depending on the piece that you want to do, depending on what you're going to wear it with, and all of that information can be found in that book, which tells you how you mix and match your colors.
This is a publication by Aileen Burton.
Yes.
Yes, yes. The Rosa Cultural Group.
Yes, we assisted her with that. And it tells you how you mix and match your colors. So if you're wearing a dress that is mainly green, then you do not get a green head tie to go with it, and you do not get a green fuller. You have to get something that clashes with it so that you get a complete picture. So I mean, there's lots of information. People just have to go out there, ask for it, look for it. The older folk have a lot of information.
Delia, what's needed to make this more mainstream, to get this into the schools, to create the basis for even little industries that are doing these things, that almost every visitor to Dominica would be interested in walking away with one of these? And we have over 30,000 visitors.
This program is very instructive in helping us along our way. We need a lot more people to really grasp the spirit and move with it. It's a lot of volunteer work, but it has to be done. And so just the people who have the skill, be willing to share. If you share with one other person, then it means that you're multiplying the effect. And the people who have the skill, they need to put it into practice.
Okay.
So that we have a lot more of these things floating around the place any time of the year, so that our visitors can see it, they will want it, they will buy it, and we will see things just beginning to flow.
And
because
not,
these things sell themselves.
Not just on Creole Day.
No. We are Dominicans all year round, 365 days a year.
On that note, Delia, again, this is just actually bringing us to the point where we're going to have a more, in-depth conversation about the cultural significance and what you said at the outset about your legacy. It's well established. We're just going to have to tell the world about this,
They'll find out sooner or later.
Okay. Thank you so much again, Delia, for this segment. And we're going to take a short break. We'll be right back with more conversation with Delia about our intangible cultural heritage, her legacy, Dominica's future. We'll be right back. Welcome back, and you've seen what I've seen, and I'm sure you're as fascinated as I am, and especially this time of year, Independence, which traditionally is the time when we appear to pay a lot more attention to these things than we normally do, which I find in itself an interesting issue, and I'd like to hear your observations on that too. But you've shown us several ties. You've shown us several angles, let's put it that way, and ways in which the cloth material can be used. Let's go a little deeper into that. What's the significance of some of these things from a personal, from a societal, and maybe from a cultural standpoint? Let's pick any one you wish to start with.
I think what I really want people to understand is that nothing must be seen as standing by itself. It is part of the whole.
Yeah.
It's like you going out and you've put on your jacket, your tie, your undershirt, your pants, your socks, your shoes.
Yes.
Something is missing. You're missing your shirt. Although you're not naked, but anybody can see that something is missing. And once we begin to understand the place that each headpiece has in the whole thing, then people will stop complaining, oh, this makes me hot. It's all in your mind.
Yeah.
But the dream that I really have is that the very same way that we spend hundreds of dollars on our African outfits for those who like them, and some of us who can afford it, the very same way we each need to make an investment in what is truly ours. Every woman should try to have proper national wear.
But what makes this ours, Delia? What you say should have something that is ours. What makes what you're wearing yours or ours? What makes what you tied ours?
It is not the fabric, Afi, because that fabric can be found anywhere.
Right, okay.
But it's the whole combination of the style, how it is specifically adapted to our climate, the splash of color, that it really helps us to express who we are. And it is because of the uniqueness of our attire that every duet is not a duet.
Okay.
When you get to that point, you can look at the way the person is dressed and say, yes, this is a duet, but this is Saint Lucian, or this is French, either Guadeloupe or Martinique. And this one is definitely Dominican.
Have you had the experience of walking into a place, you've gone out, you and your husband go out, and you are wearing what would be considered traditional wear, but people look at you and say, why are you wearing that now? It's not...
It happens all the time, Ati.
I have that experience, but I wonder...
It happens all the time. And I say to people, look, you look at this thing as a costume.
Yes.
For me, it is my clothes.
All right.
I love to wear my clothes to go to church.
You like the colors?
Yes.
The feel?
The colors, the feel, the fit. It forces me to stand up tall and be noticed. And people have come to that point now where they no longer ask me, where are you performing today? I used to laugh every time they would say that to me. But by now they have accepted the fact that, oh, Mrs. Wykes is a Creole lady. She wears her clothes all the time.
All the time.
And we have to get to that point. You know, another interesting thing that happens all the time, is that if I receive an invitation, maybe my husband and myself, to attend a function, dress formal or semi-formal, right away I get excited. Which of my duets am I going to wear? Which of my jips am I going to wear? And then I show up at this function. 9 out of 10 times, I am the only person in a duet or a jeep.
But of course you feel no way. You're very comfortable.
I feel very special.
All right.
I feel like royalty.
There you go.
And I can guarantee you that before the event is over, a number of people, both men and women, will compliment me on my choice of attire. And a lot of women bemoan the fact, oh, why didn't I think of that? And so I think by my persistence, I am actually encouraging people to think more of our clothes as something that can be worn at any time, anywhere,
which is
because it makes you stand out.
Part of your legacy, really.
Yes.
You made a mention of something, of St. Lucia, which was a question I was going to ask you later. But let's talk about it now. You've traveled professionally and, you know, in your cultural or your other life, to other islands in the Caribbean, maybe to other parts of the world that have a Creole culture. What's different about it? Could you share some impressions, let's say St. Lucia, Martinique, Guadeloupe, if you've had a chance to see and observe those?
I will tell you, in the different countries, it is different. St. Lucians use a lot of Creole in their everyday lives.
Language?
Yes.
Okay.
They speak a lot of Creole. You hear people conversing on the street, they use a lot of Creole.
Okay.
But when you listen to their Creole, and I'm being very biased, I think our Creole is more rooted than theirs, because they have a lot of English words in their Creole. And also, just when the way it drops on my ear, to me, I don't think that there's any Creole that can be as beautiful as the Creole spoken in Dominica.
What about the dress? How does St. Lucia compare with us in their attitude towards and use of the head ties, the jeep, the duets?
They use their traditional wear a lot. They do a lot of performances at the hotels all during the year.
Okay.
And a lot of times they are dressed in their national wear.
So you go to church on a Sunday, a Palm Sunday, people might end up coming there with their...
Yes, but you see, the thing is, the other thing is, depending on what feast that they're celebrating, they may use something else which fits in with their tradition. So for example, the choice of color, whether they belong to Laos or Marguerite or whatever. And they are very conscious of their history, and that is something that we have lost. And we really need to come back to that, dig deeper, let us find the significance of what it is. But that is why I said to the people at Grand Bay that they must never forget that that head tie, the fan, originated in Grand Bay. St. Lucia has adopted that, and they love that thing.
Really?
Almost as if they want to claim it as their own. But we always have to remember where it originated.
But it seems that this work that you're doing, like particularly with the head ties that you've just shown us and so on, is an important vehicle for reaffirming a sense of history and ownership and the legacy that we have with our Creole.
That is true, Arthie. And you wouldn't imagine, I say to people, I keep tying heads all during the year. Because Dominicans far and wide keep sending for these things. There is always a market for it. People who travel, people who intend to travel, people who pass through and they see these things, they want it. And would you imagine, there are people in St. Lucia waiting patiently for me to return to St. Lucia to teach them how to do the head ties.
Well, you know, Delia, just as I thought, I mean, an appropriate theme or title for our conversation could be, it's more than a head tie.
Oh, certainly. Oh, certainly.
And you've really kind of gone well beyond my own expectations in the conversation about helping me learn, and I hope our viewers learn more about this complex, beautiful thing that we call our culture, our heritage, and in this case, manifested through the kind of head ties that you're doing. We're going to take another break, and when we come back, I want us to talk a bit about, you know, what it means to tourism, the things that we take now for granted. What's the connection? Could we connect what you do with the other things that people are so focused on nowadays, earning a living? You know, what are the prospects and potential as relates to that kind of skill? Okay. On that note, let's take a short break. We'll be right back. Fascinating conversation about something we've all been taking for granted all these decades that we've, you know, gone to festival events and seen Dominica's beautiful women dressed in these, we still call them costumes, but as we learned today, they're dress, they're what we wear. And Delia has helped us understand much more than we did before we began our conversation. But I want to push the envelope a little further, Delia. As you know, I mean, in our everyday life, we're concerned about, you know, getting up, going to work, doing what we do, earning a living, keeping the family, and so forth. You've mentioned before that people did that, have always done that in agriculture and farming, and hence the clothing that you're wearing, and so on. So let's talk a bit about what you see as some of the existing or the potential links between this legacy of our culture and the other things that we do 24/7, 12 months a year, but don't always seem to connect it to who we are.
What I'll tell you, Afi, is sometimes people look at all the things that they do not have, and they do not grasp the opportunities that are right within their reach.
Okay.
For me, Creole head tying, I look at it as a very lucrative way of earning legal money, and it is something that you can do in your spare time, even as an unemployed mother with so many children to take care of. The children have to sleep. The children will go to school, and it doesn't take very long. Initially, it takes some practice because you have to hone your skill. But if you put out something that is impressive, people are willing to pay. And one of the things that I find that hurts me is that over the years, every year, the Division of Culture has a head tying session. And there are always a number of students who come to the classes. Some of them, they do very well. But once the class is over, they drop it. What I have always said to them is, money is not too much, but sometimes the 24 hours I have in a day is not enough. I'm not going to be foolish enough to ask God to give me more, because it means at the end of the day I'll be more tired. So what I would really like is to know that there are other people out there doing this thing and doing it well. So that if somebody calls on me and say, look, Delia, I need this thing, and I know I'm pressed for time or I'm out of state, then I can tell them, call Ati, call this person, and I can almost guarantee them that they will get a quality product.
Of course.
Because, you know, it is something that you can do anytime, anywhere.
You don't require whole lots of space anyway?
No, I think based on the demonstration we did, people saw. And you don't even have to have a table, a special table for that if you're at home. You have a chair, you have a head form, you have pins, you have your fabric, and you're good to go.
Yeah.
We can recycle paper, which is what they saw me doing.
Absolutely.
So instead of just buying the newspapers and throwing them away, put them to productive use.
Absolutely. You know what's interesting as well? A couple of years ago, there was a study done on on why people choose the Caribbean as their vacation spot. And this astounding figure has stuck in my mind. 73% of the stayover arrivals to all Caribbean destinations, ranging from Cuba all the way down to Suriname, choose the Caribbean because of the cultural experience that they have. And we don't seem to connect those dots, because when the same article was interviewing directors of tourism about culture, and one director of tourism in an island that should remain nameless says, oh, they can come anytime. Every weekend we have culture. Every weekend we have a cultural event. So look at the distance in awareness between what the visitor now expects and what our managers of the sector are thinking is culture.
But you see, I think again is the misunderstanding. Because for them, culture means a cultural presentation, a show, a fete.
Right.
But for me, culture is our everyday life. It is the way we express ourselves, the way we laugh, the way we talk, the way we switch, the way we switch from proper English to Creole, because the joke would only have that essence if you give it in Creole. The way we embrace people that we haven't seen in a long time. And the way sometimes we interact, because we are so warm.
Because there's the other thought that we appear to, and you said it yourself, have lost certain elements of that culture that are the intangibles, you know, the respectful greeting of an elder, for example, the rising to ensure that the elders are comfortable, the inquiry about what about a glass of this, or a glass of water, or a glass of juice, you know, the hospitality that became an industry but was our culture. It's an interesting kind of conflict situation we've created. How does what you do help us to sort of restore that balance between what we consider, what we do for a living, and who we are? How do we bring those two together so hospitality is natural as it used to be?
I think we have to almost hypnotize ourselves back to that state where we understand it's not putting on a show, it's just being who you are naturally. So you walk on the street, somebody is coming in the opposite direction, the person's face is very serious. It doesn't hurt to say hello. That may be the first nice thing that that person has had for the day. And I've tried it a number of times, and I can tell you it works.
It works, absolutely. Absolutely.
And sometimes you form a bond with that person for life just by having said a kind word. We sometimes do not want to share that with our Dominican compatriots, but we put on a fake show for the visitors. But our visitors are no longer all white. Sometimes the black person you see walking on the street is a visitor as well.
Absolutely.
And that impression that they get will determine whether they come or go.
How about just in the workplace and the interaction, as you're hinting at now, among ourselves, Dominican to Dominican, village to village, even villager to villager? Are things like our cultural department, cultural division, cultural I mean, is this too artificial? Can you create a ministry to do something that should be coming naturally? I'm thinking this one.
No, it is not wrong, you know, Afi. In fact, I think it is desperately needed.
Okay.
And it needs to be buffered because there's a lot of work to be done. I know I am in a special place because of the time that I was born, because of the experience that I had, the teachings that I got from the older folk around me. I feel sorry for some of our younger folk because they missed out on certain things. But recognizing that, I feel I have a responsibility to pass on to them certain things that they do not know. We're not born knowing everything.
Sure.
And so sometimes when you hear the young people talking about they're bored with the cultural dances and they don't like to wear this, and it is just out of ignorance. They don't know better.
That leads me to ask you this question. You work with computers in your other professional life.
Yes.
Right. The young people are growing up with computers, held in their hands, in their pockets, all over. What are the prospects for, what are the suggestions you might have for bringing this IT world that seems to be always juxtaposed to, in contradiction to, things traditional? How do we pull these closer together so we create a comfort zone for those very young people who we must entrust the task of carrying through that legacy that you wish to leave? How do we pull these things together?
I think we have to use what is available now to really push the message. So for example, I grew up sitting and listening to stories.
Okay.
Young people can hardly sit for any extended period of time.
Okay.
If you tell them that Lawrence Brumant is telling contes at the Old Mill, they may not be willing to come. However, if you are able to put Lawrence Brumant on YouTube, they may actually sit there and listen to it.
Absolutely.
And also, it allows them to merge the old with the new. Because we know a lot of our young people now, they have special skills in doing the little animation. Let them take a story of Lawrence Brumant and come up with the animated characters and put it together like a cartoon, a Dominican story.
There you go.
And that makes it more interesting. But if we decide to remain stuck in the past, to become so traditional that we cannot move away from the mortar and pestle, let us put the tonton on YouTube. You know, this is how you make a proper tonton. This is what is supposed to go with it. And this is how you eat it out of the calabash.
Absolutely. And that doesn't prevent you from dealing with your computers and iPads and iPods.
You're doing everything on the computer, on the iPad, on the iPod. You carry it with you as you're going.
On that note, I want to thank you, Delia, for actually really exceeding all my personal expectations of this conversation, although I should have known better. And you have left us with a challenge, how to restore balance between what we do traditionally and how to bring it together with the modern world and technology pieces that our next several generations are growing up with. Starting with head ties, you see we've ended up with the next generation. Legacy. What Delia wants us to think about. Delia, thank you so much. Love you for everything you are and what you're doing for us. Continue.
Thanks for the opportunity, Api.
My pleasure. We'll see you guys next time.